In today's crazy world, we're constantly using things we don't need, doing things we don't like, and never really moving forward or getting the results we're hoping for in either ourselves or our animals. Are you ready for a change? Join me, Wendy Patrick, your host on Quantumly Yours, Finnessiam Health's podcast, and become empowered to take control of you and your animals' health and well-being. We're all quantumly connected, so whether you're round the corner or around the world, it doesn't matter, because we can help each other and all work together on our journeys. So come, join me, and together we'll myth bust, share advice, knowledge, truths, and suggestions to help you awaken, grow, and continue your journey to a healthier, happier life. Hi, folks, and welcome to another edition of Quantumly Yours. I'm your host, Wendy Patrick. I'm welcoming you to join us for another chat, listen, education, information, tidbits, whatever. But I hope you're doing well out there. I really hope that life is treating you the way that you want it to. And if it isn't, change it. May sound a little bit odd, but that's fine. If you've been following me this far, you know I'm odd by now, so none of this is coming as a surprise to either of us. Let's be real. But we do have the power within ourselves to change anything we don't like. And that's what we're all doing on this journey. A lot of you are following along with us in the background, keeping very quiet, and other people are letting me know how much they're enjoying this. And we are getting some questions and things coming through as well now. So I know that we're getting through to a few people, and a few people have thanked me for doing this, which, you know what? If it's just one person, even if it's only that one person that I have helped, then that has made this worthwhile. But I know along the journey as well that I'm helping a lot of animals, and that really is my purpose. But getting into today's episode, I just want to do some housekeeping first and remind you all to like, subscribe, share, click any buttons that are connected to this to make sure you get notifications of when our next episode goes out. Generally speaking, it's every Thursday. And also, as well, if you didn't join us in June 16th, we have a middle of the month live Q&A on Zoom, and that is actually private and to not just to invites only, but it's to people who actually request to join. And if you do that, you can do that through our website. There'll be a link on there, and also some maybe Facebook or Instagram poster that will go out, and also on our weekly newsletter as such from Finnessiam, just to let people know that the new edition or new episode has gone live. So always the recent one on there, the link will be there to basically click and enter your info. And if you have a question, let us know about it beforehand, and then that can help us to be a little more organized on the live Q&A. And if you show up, then basically your question will get in there. And we're expecting to start small. So that's great. Come along at the beginning, because then we'll have more time to spend with you and on your specific question. So thank you all for taking part in that. And also thank you as well for the referrals out there, because only because of you can I pay the bills in the background to then give me the pleasure of being able to put these together and getting this out there for you. And for as long as we can possibly maintain this as well, we won't be monetized. So we won't be going on to any of those other channels that we're going to ask you to pay for to see us. This is information that needs to get out to the masses, and especially to those who are looking for alternative or other help. and especially can't afford to maybe subscribe or go on to these bigger name channels who are doing a lot of great work, but also touting an awful lot of maybe products that aren't quite passing what even my little standard would be. But whenever you learn how to test energetically, you will also understand where I'm coming from. And you'll also understand how to be able to work all this stuff out yourself. But today on Quantumly Yours, I am going to actually address a question that came in from one of our listeners. And it was actually asking about the tissue salts. And if any of you have known me for a while or are one of my clients, then you will know that I do a lot with tissue salts. And she was asked a couple of parts to the question. Um, Basically, it was what really are they? Well, like what do they do? And what's an how do they differ from a multivitamin, mineral supplement, etc.? Why is it better? What's an essential element and why? So we'll break that down a little bit for you and for the rest of you listening, and hopefully answer that question in a few different bits. But let's start off with what's an essential element and why? Well, basically, an essential element or an essential mineral is something that we need to survive, simply. Most of these things we cannot actually make in our body ourselves. So, you know, the way there's lots of things that we can actually make in our own body and build immune systems, and we can make our own blood cells and we can make our own platelets and we can do this in cartilage and all the rest of it. But we can't actually make the minerals that we actually need for our existence. So that's why we eat food. So basically, we get all of our essential minerals, nutrients, vitamins like that from food, or we did. So going to Hippocrates, going, food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And therefore, the title that we put onto this podcast of when food is not thy medicine. And it's basically, there's a few different reasons for that. The main reason is because we can't get all of these essential minerals from our food anymore because our food doesn't contain them. And that's because they depleted the soils from over farming. And whenever farmers were really pressurized into stopping arable farming, which is where they would give a field a rest for a year, rotate crops and things like that, and they were basically being pushed and pressurized to do a particular amount of yield from an amount of land every single year. So they didn't have that chance to maybe do a lower yielding crop or a lower priced crop, or in fact rest that field for a year as an arable farming so that the nutrients could be replenished into the soil and the soil could actually rejuvenate itself with rains and fertilizers and things like that. So that was one thing. And I had learned a few years ago that whenever they were testing our soils for nutrient deficiency, it was down to about 85%. Now, I can't quite recall the dates when they started recording that, but it was already after they had stopped arable farming. So, in that case, their starting point was already a depletion point. And whenever they finally realized this in I want to say it was the early 2000s, um, forgive me, history's not my bag at all. Dates escape me. Don't even ask me what I did yesterday, for goodness sakes. So, but whenever the people, those that should be not named or whatever, the group that get together and discuss all of this stuff for us little worker bees at the bottom of the heap, and go, well, so our soils are now so nutrient deficient that it's about 90 to 95% depleted in minerals. So what do we do? And they went, well, for the average person to get the nutrients and minerals that they need from their diet, they'd have to consume about 8 times as much food as they used to. And they're like, oh, well, we can't do that. We're trying to push food shortages. We can't get people to eat more. They're not going to eat more. Most of them are already overweight. So what are we going to do? So they came up with this brilliant plan: stop reporting. So they don't collect any data anymore on that. They don't look at that anymore on that. That particular group is gone. They decided, well, we're not going to report it anymore, because to tell the general public that they're going to have to eat 8 times as much as they used to in, say, the 1950s even, is going to cause complete pandemonium. So they stopped doing that. And then just the other week, I heard someone else speaking on a similar topic, and they actually likened it to a head of lettuce. And to get the same nutrient value from a head of lettuce, even though there's not an awful lot in that anyway, it's mostly water, compared to 50 years ago, you'd have to eat 10 lettuces. So there was another comparison. So it's absolutely apparent and well known, and pretty much, we all know about this now. Anybody that's listening to this usually would. But if you don't, sorry, newsflash, not to be the bearer of bad news, don't kill the messenger, that kind of thing. But yeah, our food is completely and utterly nutrient deficient. I don't care how clean you're eating. I don't care how wonderful you're doing this, that, or the other thing. If you're organically farming in your backyard and you're rotating crops and you're adding nutrients and you're not spraying and you're not adding pesticides, which you probably aren't if you're doing it in your backyards to avoid that, then you've got a slightly better chance. As long as you're using heritage seeds, for example. And the seeds themselves, I mean, if as long as they're not treated, they're not GMO'd or this, that, or the other thing. But how are you going to know? How you're going to know if you're nutrient deficient is that you are going to become at a state in your body where you're not quite at ease anymore. So maybe things just aren't as easy. Movement may not be as easy. Sleeping may not be as easy. There may be all sorts of things, and you're now in a state of dis-ease. That's simple. So, what do we do about it? Well, to answer that question, those essential minerals and everything else we need to get from somewhere. And in fact, there's something, and I tried to look up what the real name or wording of it is, but it's basically something now that doctors are labeling as a multi-nutrient deficiency syndrome or disease. So it's being very, very well known and recognized that this is an issue. This is something that is an issue, and we can't just toddle through lives anymore on a couple of smoothies and some green tea. But we do need something to be able to add into our routine or our protocols that are going to bring those proper minerals back into our system. So we work with cell salts, mineral salts, tissue salts. It's all the same thing. It's just whoever's group you're in, or whoever's doctors you follow, or whoever you're a practitioner of, or whatever products you have. Just depends as to how they're called. But cell salts, tissue salts, mineral salts, they are all the same. They are similar. I'm going to say similar to homeopathy, which a lot of people are a little more familiar with than cell salts themselves. But where homeopathy tries to tackle the disease with the same disease in order to stimulate action of the body to work against it, tissue salts and cell salts or mineral salts are adding in the essential minerals and nutrients for daily living, for actual functioning of all of these cells and stuff. So it's not attacking like with like, which is what homeopathy is, but rather adding to what we have a deficiency of in order for our systems to work better. And I've done so many notes today because I'm so organized, because you know how I like to ramble off on tangents. So I'm going to make sure I try and actually get the notes in here. So the importance of vitamins, especially vitamin C, was actually covered by Dr. Linus Pauling, who, if any of you follow me on Facebook under Finnessiam Health, you'll see that there's generally maybe once a week, at least once every 2 weeks. There's usually a quote or a picture of him in there, because he was a fantastic doctor, actually one of the world's greatest scientists. He comes in the top 20 in the top of the scientists chart. But he's very little known about him. Probably more because, well, most of the age group that I'm talking to and that I'm part of now was already almost done school by the time he really made his mark on the world, or by the time it got into any of the schools or any of the teaching. But he was the main doctor involved in promoting the wonderful attributes of vitamin C. But he was very much into his quantum mechanics. And for a little nerdy joke, which I came up with when I was putting my show notes together, that he was very much a researcher into um, atom bonds, not atom bombs. So that's BONDS, not BOMDS. I'm sorry if I have to spell that for people who don't understand my accent. And probably for the sake of YouTube subtitles as well, which are usually quite amusing in themselves to listen to, or to read after I've put a podcast out there. Uh, yeah, they get a little bit confused with the Belfast accent, I think, on the YouTube subtitle person. Bless them. Anywho, I'm digressing. Go figure. So basically, Linus Pauling did a lot of work in, well, obviously vitamin C and atom, and things like that. But he went into biochemistry and using lots of his research in science. He actually was a lecturer at Caltech. And basically, with his research and everything, he liked to find out how vitamins worked in the system, how the atoms worked, how things actually worked in connection with each other, how things mirrored or fit in together. So he was really close to actually discovering the helix bond itself. But he went into the 1960s and basically was more intrigued with biochemistry and nutrition. So he was the one who you'll see a lot of the quotes about, saying that all diseases can be linked back to a nutritional or mineral deficiency. So he's very much a key player in the stuff that I like to follow, and that would be my nerdy fangirl thing there, if you like. But that's basically explaining a little bit about our essential minerals, and our essential elements of minerals, and why do we need to take them? Well, we need to if we want to actually continue living. It's kind of simple like that. Um, so there are different types. Now, if you go to the likes of Schussler, Schussler's cell salts, which are probably one of the most commonly known ones out there because Schussler has been around. He was the main developer of the 12 tissue salts or cell salts that are essential to the body. But that's grown as other ones have been discovered to be complementary or also essential. And the minerals themselves are now kind of split into macro minerals and macro and micro. Sorry. The micro minerals are the smaller ones, or trace minerals, if you like, that are needed in smaller quantities. Now, that doesn't mean that they're lesser important. It actually just means that they're actually more potent in a smaller quantity, which would be my understanding of that. I'm sure you can let me know if I got it wrong. Um, but the trace elements, you'd only need them in a tiny amount. A large amount could also be counterproductive, with chelating with some of the other ones. But the major or macro minerals are the ones in the larger quantities that we need. So cell salts actually work on an energetic and nutrient level. So what they do, as opposed to with the homeopathy, as we said, where like cures like is what the premise, or the law of, what was my notes I put down? Yeah, the law of similars is what homeopathy is more like. Works on extreme dilutions. Um, And we'll come back to that in a little second. But basically, the cell salts are there to help to restore function of the cells. So that would be the basic difference between the tissue salts. They really are essential in restoring the function. And certainly, if our cells aren't functioning at full capacity because of a deficiency, disease will set in. It makes perfect sense whenever you see it and you look at it broken down like that. Well, to me, it does. I hope it does to you as well, because I'm trying to help you guys to understand what they are. Um, you can very easily go onto your search engines as well and just look up what are the 12 key cell salts, and you'll find them right there for you. You can also see as well, through a little bit more digging, that the standard list is about 16 now, with four other ones kind of creeping around there at the bottom of the list. So we're almost up to 20. And as I say, that's just as further information, discoveries, research, and everything continues to find out the part or role that all of these other little nutrients play in working within the human system. Because we're really not that smart of a race when it comes to it. And what we think we know is, it's not as much as what we don't know. And if we knew half of what we don't know, we still wouldn't know it all. But yeah, it's just to basically mess with you and saying things like that. But I use tissue salts here in a very big way because they work. The biggest advocates that I can tell you for the cell salts are animals that I use them with. Um, they can't lie. They don't understand a placebo effect, and they don't understand that this little white pill is actually going to do anything. Well, number one, it's not a pill. What is it? So basically, if you see a lot of these little white tablets, homeopathy sometimes are very powdery almost, because they're meant to dissolve under your tongue. Now, cell salts are a little more firm than that, or in fact, the ones that I deal with. And they can be crushed up and put under your tongue, and that's the best way to absorb them. Certainly, I understand that you can't do that with a dog or a horse. Um, so I do actually use them with food. And people go, well, you can't absorb it, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, put it this way, it's still going into the system. So we work out the dosage, we test for everyone individually as to whether it's going to work to start with, whether it's what they need, and how much then they need of it, depending on how depleted the system is. And that's why I hugely encourage anyone to learn how to muscle test. Um, Please as well, something we might actually cover in one of our monthly Q&As is doing an actual muscle test, little quick show and tell. So that's something that you might want to jump into one of the Q&As to actually ask about or find out about. Certainly, if the Q&As become to a point where they are very informative, then we will certainly look at producing those and posting those on our different sites too. But the chances are they will remain private. So please jump into those if you are interested in finding out something specific. Certainly, as well, if you are one of my clients, it's something that I will happily teach you how to do is to muscle test. This is something that should not be kept secret. A lot of companies will do that. A lot of practitioners will do that as well. I would rather teach all of my clients to become empowered to be able to take charge of their health and their animals' health and well-being a lot easier, and something that anybody can learn how to do and practice it, and definitely do that. Now, going back into our cell salts and our homeopathy, some people may know or have heard that they come in different solutions or dilutions. And what does that all mean? Well, this is the fun part actually, whenever you look at the homeopathy side of it. And in fact, some of the cell salts and some of the other things that I deal with here, we actually do work on dilutions, and some of the test vials and things that I have as well do have different solutions or strengths of a substance within them to test against. Um, so the actual dilution, homeopathy, for example, is very, very highly diluted substances. And what they aim to do then is to really stimulate the body to heal itself. Now, it actually is quite amusing to me because it actually goes against chemistry. Science doesn't like it or accept that homeopathy or probably cell salts are actually useful in any state. And that's why we're poo pooed over a lot, because theoretically they can't work. And if you look at it from a science background or logical thinking background as to how else we've been taught or told repeatedly about other things working and how things should work, then this basically goes against the grain of all of it. Because with with a substance with lesser or none of the original substance in it because of dilution to such a great extent, actually works at a better or a more potent level than a lesser diluted version. So, in other words, that's saying that less is more, very much so. And science doesn't agree with that. So, that completely goes against the laws of chemistry. But it works. And that's the thing. Again, a lot of it is because we don't truly understand how powerful and potent our bodies are themselves with whatever we can glean from it, as opposed to science having to have its laws and its reasoning and its facts, if you like. So that's kind of nice. It's almost like, God sitting on the sidelines pointing and laughing, because he's like, yeah, I've got you again, haven't you? Because you can't prove that one. So I get a bit of a kick out of that, but that's just my twisted little sense of humor. Um, so I think we've answered these. Why are they different from a multivitamin or mineral supplement? The biggest thing to answer that part of the question is because you can go to any store, any grocery store, any health food store, and buy a multivitamin or multi-mineral. One of the main things is they're mass produced. Now, anyone who is working with a homeopath or compounding homeopathic practitioner or pharmacist or a natural doctor who has their own products of cell salts or mineral salts will be making them in a small batch. And in fact, the ones I used are very, very nicely ionically charged, so they will work as soon as they enter the body. When you're looking at products that have been sitting on a shelf for X amount of months, years, who knows? Well, a lot of that stuff is fillers. 9 times out of 10, yeah, they're in a plastic bottle and they're sitting on a metal shelf. One of the things with our cell salts is that you should never do is actually crush them up with a metal spoon or feed them in a metal dish, because they will actually lose their charge and are not as quickly adapted to use in the body once they get into the system. So a lot of things with things sitting on a shelf is they're full of fillers. So a lot of times you're paying for fillers and preservatives rather than actually getting a pure substance, which is what you need. Now, the energy of these also makes a huge difference, because it's the same thing where we're talking quite frequently about the vibe or the energy or the frequency that something holds, and that is all to do with all of our quantum mechanics and how things are connected. But if you put in an energetic intent into whatever you're taking off the shelf, it's still going to work. Um, it's not going to have the charge to work on its own merit as much as it will be working from your merit or the credit or belief system that you're giving to it. So, in fact, you are actually giving it more energy. And that's exactly as well how placebos work. Um, and certainly a lot of things you have to be careful with out there, that they are just placebos. And a lot of times you are just actually making these things work because you believe in them. That's not a bad thing, though. So don't get me wrong. The only reason I don't like people selling placebos is because they're just fleecing you out of your hard earned money. And I don't like that much because I've been fleeced enough times as well to know that no, I would like to get what I pay for and I should deserve to do that. And it saddens me where a lot of companies will put a placebo out there, but market it so well that they know it's going to work because people believe in the marketing. And that will take me to another little podcast where we will go into myth busting the marketing. So that's another one that'll be coming up soon. In the meantime, though, I think that has probably answered all of that question. I really hope it does. The listener is probably listening to this, and I know she will let me know if this has answered her question for her. And in the meantime, I wish you all well. I wish you good healing. I wish you good health. And I will hopefully see you on the next episode of Quantum Years. And in the meantime, stay possum.
All information, products, and topics discussed in the show are simply the host and guest's personal opinions and are for informational purposes only. None claim to offer a diagnosis, treatment, or cure. All listeners and viewers are encouraged to do their own research and consult with their own healthcare providers before changing or adapting any new protocols. Finnessiam Holistic Health, nor any of its entities, assume any responsibility or liability for any consequence relating directly or indirectly from the information contained within the podcast.